I work at CloudBees. I'm product manager for this new effort called Blue Ocean, which is a brand new user experience for Jenkins. I've been working in software development tools space for probably about 10 years. Previously was a product manager at Atlassian for Bamboo, so I used to work for the competitor. And I've come to the side of the light, and I'm helping out the Jenkins community with user experience. For me, user experience is more than just pretty UIs. It's really about how you guys, the developers, all of you, interact with, all the tools that you need to use to get your jobs done. And so while we will be showing some pretty UIs today, I think that there's nothing better than no UI, right? And so we want to get to a point where things are magic and work magically, and you don't have to think about it. You can just get back to writing code. So really, if we think about why Jenkins needs a user experience, is like, if you're a Jenkins user, you know the pain. You know the pain today. So, trying to find the set of plugins that you need for the tools that you use to get the job done. You get the right magic mix of that, and then you're probably pretty good at that point. If you've seen Jenkins, it's been the same for about 10 years, and things have moved on quite a bit. And I want to talk a little bit about why that is, I guess, like a bad thing for Jenkins and a bad thing for developers, and how we can go ahead and fix that. So that's kind of where we are. But really what I wanted to identify is this exponential change across the software industry that's been happening, right? So, in the last couple of years, I'm sure most of you work in the cloud, so things have been moving to the cloud. Everything's becoming simpler, faster, better, and more turnkey, and that's all really great. And we're kind of asking ourselves, like, how can Jenkins survive that onslaught of change, right? If we're releasing, Jenkins does what, weekly releases. So we're moving quite quickly, but really the dial's not moving on the way that people use Jenkins, right? So we're fixing bugs, we're adding more features, we're not removing features, we're not thinking about, like, is this actually the best way to solve the problem? And I think, that comes down, I don't think it comes down to any sort of complacency. I think, like, Jenkins community knows what they like. And through Blue Ocean, we kind of want to expand our horizons. So we want to say people who aren't in the Jenkins community, who aren't Jenkins experts, we want to invite them in so that they can get some real benefits out of it. And I think what's happened over the last couple of years is this consumerization of developer tools. So what I mean by that is that as technology changes in, say, the consumer space, the developer tool, the way that developer tools are designed and the way that people want to interact with them, that has changed as the consumer space has changed, right? So I've got an example here. So Ada is, we do a lot of user experience personas, and Ada is our developer. Ada, I don't know how to pronounce it properly. Ada is our developer persona. And so let's, like, take ourselves back 10 years. It's almost 10 years. It's the year 2007. I think you guys just elected Obama at that point, around about that time, or George Bush was, yeah, something like that. And, internet memes weren't really a thing. And so she's 12 years old and destined that unfortunate day, fate of becoming a software engineer. And if you look at Ada's world from 2007 to 2017, there's been a lot of change that's happened, right? Can you remember phones before iPhone? Like how?
Or Android.
Or Android, or... Wrong building. But like before, like, you go to a restaurant, it's like download our app and pre-order and stuff. So like, and I think even in 2007, some people still had CRT monitors, right? And yeah, which is really gross, because I'm looking at my my retina screen right now and my eyes aren't bleeding, and I'm very thankful for that. And then, social net, there was that big craze around social networks, which were really about, like, okay, we have this internet thing. How do we get this internet thing into the hands of more and more and more people and help them, communicate with their friends and family better, right? So, in taking this technology to enable this change in the way that people, making that technology fit sort of seamlessly into people's lives, right? And then you've got GitHub who come along and go, we're going to make code, like the development of code, social, right? And they really succeeded at that. And so now if you're looking for any kind of software in, of any kind, this is your first stop. And you probably use this tool. This is probably for a lot of people, the center of their universe, right? Is collaborating with their team members on pull requests. You've got companies like Heroku who go and say, the process of deploying software quick is hard, right? So if I'm building a Rails app or I'm building a Node.js app, why can't I just make it go run, right? It's pretty standard. And why can't I just, pull a slider across and then all the scaling sort of happens? So we used to have a joke with a company I used to work for, which was any scaling problem was like, let's just add some more dynos, that'll fix it. It's not necessarily true, but they sold people on that vision of, move a slider and your website scales. The more you pay, the more you scale, right? And it's such a simple value proposition, like if you're Heroku and you're trying to sell that. But it's actually the dream for developers. That's like, you've just taken like all of the operations, for a certain class of apps, like completely, I don't have to do that job anymore. And more recently, we've got companies like Slack who are sort of improving the way that teams communicate together, right? And so by the time Ada, graduates her college in computer science, she's entering a world where some of the interactions that we're going to have with web services are going to be like, agents on your phone, like Siri or M or, I don't know what Google's one's called, but sorry. Okay, Google. Yeah. Google Now, right? And so we're going to be interacting. That's the way that we're going to be interacting with a lot of these web services, right? And if you fast forward to if you go back in time to 2007, that was science fiction, right? And while that's happened, Jenkins hasn't changed, right? While all of this mind-blowing, if you've ever read Charles Stross's Accelerando, while we're on the acceleration curve to where all of this impossible stuff is now possible, Jenkins hasn't adapted to that world at all. So when Ada is going to go out, she's like, you know what? I just graduated university and my friends have just convinced me not to get that safe internship and start a company. Is she going to use Jenkins? Probably not, right? And that's a real threat, right, for the Jenkins community, because they've spent so long building this software as a labor of love, and in an instant it can just be irrelevant, right, if we don't change it. And I think it's a real testament to the love that the community has put into Jenkins that it has survived, right? And so we need to figure out how to make Jenkins work smarter and harder for people, right? So I think, with change, the only way that you can approach change is to take it head on and just embrace that things are going to change, right? And so what that really means is that Jenkins is going to need to change and evolve as the needs of software developers change, right? It's not this static thing. So we're going to build Blue Ocean and we're going to stick a 1.0 on it because we like Semver and all that kind of stuff. But it's next year, Blue Ocean could be quite different, right? Depending on what you guys want and what you guys decide is important. So I'll give you a good example of what has happened in Jenkins. 10 years ago, some people were still using CVS. That's a bit shocking to think about, but we were. And Subversion was really popular, right? And this Git thing was just a twinkle in Linus Torvalds' eye. He's still using BitKeeper. And so we had CVS support bundled with Jenkins, and that's a really good decision to make, right, at the time. And then when Subversion became popular, did it get bundled in Jenkins? No, it was actually the first thing you had to install after you installed Jenkins, which is really easy, by the way. Really good job on that. And then at a certain point later on, it should have probably been unbundled because no one uses it anymore, right? And maybe the community stops maintaining it. Right? Maybe it becomes less important because it's not important anymore. And only a few months ago with Jenkins 2 did we add Git. And we've all been using Git for 5-6 years, right? So if you want to sum up what we're trying to do here is Blue Ocean's mission is to continuously improve the developer experience to meet the expectation of modern developers on Jenkins. That's our mission. So if that means today it's pretty UI because it's kind of like a good starting point, it's going to be pretty UI. If it's the way that you do Git workflows and you do Git flow, or there's some new thing that comes out, it's going to be that, right? If it could all be all sorts of things, right? And so today it's that. Tomorrow it could be something else. So yeah, so I guess to kind of sum that up, the tools actually play a big part in this. So depending on what tools you're using, I guess the user experience of Jenkins could change. So to give you an example, if I'm a GitHub user, a Bitbucket user, and I'm submitting pull requests, why doesn't the code coverage information show up inside my pull request, right? Why isn't that there in context while I'm doing the code review? Has my colleague done a good job, right? Today you have to switch back to Jenkins to get that and dig through lots of UI to get that information, but why isn't it just there for you contextually? So so they're the kind of things that we want to look at with Blue Ocean. All right, cool. So I'm going to get any questions before I dig into what we're actually targeting for our 1.0. No? Okay, cool. Sweet. All right, so what you can see here is the Jenkins dashboard. So this is just the list of all the Jenkins jobs on your server. With Blue Ocean, we're trying to build a really excellent experience around Jenkins pipeline. So at the moment, there's lots of different job types. And if you go into Jenkins, there's like this new item link. It's like for new users, it's like, what's a new item? We don't really guide people to where the good stuff is. And so we think that Jenkins pipeline is sort of the future way that people will create and define their jobs. We're working on, new authoring tools for that, so graphical authoring tools. So if you really like that freestyle job experience, we want to give that to pipeline users. So these are all pipelines. You can see here, actually the top 3 are pipelines, the bottom 3 are freestyle jobs. You can see here, we've got a historical health of what your master branch is like, or whatever default branch you've got set. The status of the branches, so we say, just simply they're all passing, 31 are passing, or there are actually 2 failing. It doesn't really matter how many other branches there are. So we try to remove sort of, uninteresting information from the UI to increase the clarity. And how many pull requests that you're currently merged validating. So pipeline has this pre-existing feature where if you've got it all hooked up with GitHub or Bitbucket, it will merge master with your changes and test that, so that when you hit the merge button or do it from the command line, you've got that assurance that something works. So there's actually quite a bit of integration in 1.0 for Blue Ocean that we have planned around GitHub and Bitbucket in particular, because they just seem to be the tools of the now for this kind of thing. So let's go have a look at a pipeline. So if you're not familiar with Jenkins pipeline, it's a kind of a pseudo script language where you can define stages of your build and tasks steps that run, and if they run in parallel and not, and these get stored in a Jenkins file in your Git repo. And so Jenkins is constantly, as it detects changes, is constantly reading that, and that's your build configuration. So what you can see here is one of these pipelines. It's been instantiated, a list of the runs across all the branches. In this example, I only have one branch called master. You can see if this was a live thing, and if you go to our Blue Ocean project page, we have a link to a live server. But it'll be spinning. One of the cool things is that because it's an entirely new technology stack built onto React.js and this new technology called server-side events, we actually can update this page live without a refresh, and it's actually more efficient than just your regular standard Ajax app, because the server is actually pushing state out to clients. So it's pretty cool from a fun standard. So these guys over here, embarrassing. These guys have been working really hard on making all that stuff just magic. And as I mentioned before, every pipeline can have a set of branches. So what we like to show on this screen is really if you're working on a feature branch, you really just care whether or not it's working right now or not. You're not too fussed with the history. So if you click on one of these, you get a detail on the run result that pops up, and I'll show that in a moment. You can see the weather for that. So say if it's a long-lived feature branch or something, it gives you a bit of a status report over X number of historical builds. Some people find the weather thing a little, I got that when we released this and we got onto Hacker News, there was like a big fight about whether icons were good or not. So that's still up for debate, but that's the marker that's the thing that we have right now, but that could change to a Spark line later if we feel that's what we want to do. So cool. And of course, these are pull requests. So they're just like those branches that you saw before, but they're linked to a pull request in GitHub or Bitbucket. You can click on those and see what how your code is actually integrated with master. So that's a really useful tool if you're working with systems that have pull requests. So everything you see here, you can get for freestyle jobs, except for the branches and pull requests, because that's a native pipeline feature. So cool. So as I mentioned before, you can use pipeline to describe these steps and parallelism and stages and such. So we've got a nice rendering of that there. And as you click on on each node there, it actually renders out at the bottom, the log broken up by the steps that actually got executed. And if you open up one of these failing results, it'll actually scroll you down and expand the step that failed. So that's so that you don't actually have to hunt through that 10,000 line log file, which is, it's a big pain, particularly if you're doing something serious. So it kind of encourages you to kind of categorize and break up the steps of your build. And then you get this nice experience of, we're pointing you to where the error is rather than you having to fish for it. So that's a good example of just some of the little productivity boosts we're adding to Blue Ocean just to make it easier for you guys to use Jenkins. And of course, we don't get to see, I'm sure a lot of people don't get to see the success screen very often. At least on our team, we don't. Mostly these days. You don't look at it when it's successful. I look at it when it's successful, but when you do need to go back to a successful result, like if you're fishing, release artifacts or something off, we just hide all of the information that you're not interested in. So it's really clear that there's actually nothing here that you need to do, right? So if you want to get to the logs, you can expand the step. You can get to the changes on the other tabs, tests, artifacts. And we actually just landed a really nice new test reporting, which is not in this slide deck, a nice test reporting UI. So if you're outputting JUnit test results, there's a really funky way of doing that. So, XUnit. Yeah. Cool. So one other key feature of Blue Ocean is this personalization feature. So we're thinking, like Jenkins is kind of for teams rather than for individuals. And sometimes that can be a bit of a broken window problem. Like if stuff is broken, it's the team's problem, not your problem. And so what we wanted to do is not lay the blame on anyone, but we wanted Jenkins to kind of surface the information that is happening around the things that you're interested in so that you can action them, right? And you can find those things quicker. And so one of the use cases I have is is it safe to go to lunch, right? You're sitting there, you checked in, oh no, it's 11:30. Is it going to get through all the pipelines? So we're introducing this personalization feature. So using a simple favoriting system, you can favorite branches of your pipeline, or if you say push a branch and Jenkins detects that you're the author of that branch, it favorites it for you. So that eventually your dashboard is filled with relevant information. So for example, if there's a pipeline that you've favorited that you were an approver for and it's waiting there for some approval, it appears at the top because you're probably blocking a deploy, right? If you're working on a Jenkins server that's used by many teams and you have shared libraries, you may have committed a change that broke that library, but it's not something that you're really interested in. So even though this one here, Jenkins IO, so sometimes I commit to Jenkins IO and Tyler gets upset because I've broken something, which happens frequently. That's going to appear at the top there, even though that's something I don't want to monitor every day, right? And then, of course, the things that I've favorited that aren't sort of flagged as this special kind of thing, running things go at the top, running and queued at the top, failing, then successful. So clicking on one of these brings up one of those result pages, which makes it very easy for you to dive in and action that information. And hopefully with the things like the logs broken up by step and scrolling down to the failing step, that's going to make it like one click and you're right there, like right in, you're right in diagnosis mode. We're going to add some things as well, because it's not always the log that, the log isn't always indicative of what the failure is. Sometimes the build could fail because test failed. So we're kind of exploring some options where we might actually display at the bottom of that, step that was producing the test output, like these are the things that are broken, click here and go to the full test reporting analysis. So cool. All right. So that's what I've got for you so far. And so I left a little bit of time if there was any questions. That was quicker than I thought it was going to be.
Why don't you show us Blue Ocean? I know it exists.
Okay.
It's not just as
fine. All right. So how does it look up there? Is it fine?
Yeah.
Okay. Hopefully we haven't done a deploy and broken everything. So, because we are building we're building an automation server. So we actually have Jenkins. So Blue Ocean actually ships as a plugin on top of Jenkins. So you don't have to get a special version of Jenkins. You can just use the LTS version and install the plugin from the Experimental Update Center. We posted a blog on Jenkins.io like yesterday on how you can do that. So if you want to try it locally in production, you can do. Some people were like, I just showed my boss this and now it's part of my KPIs. And like, I was like, good luck. Okay, cool. So you can go play around with it. It's read only at the moment. We are building I had it up on the projector before. We are building a nice way for you to graphically build your pipeline. But we're hoping that gets into the 1.0. There's a few dependencies that we need to sort out. So the point is that Blue Ocean is just read only at the moment. So just reads your existing data. So if you've got freestyle jobs, which I'm sure most of you do, they'll show up, but you won't get the fancy pipeline graph because you don't use pipeline. You won't get branches and pull requests. So there's some really good reasons to switch to pipeline, which is good. Always need to like spruik the pipeline. But hopefully Blue Ocean kind of speaks for it as well. So what you can see here is that dashboard that we had. If we scroll down, let's go and have a look at Jenkins design language is good. So actually all the UI components that we've built, this is an interesting thing. So we build everything in React.js, and all of the common components like the tabs and buttons and table styles, all of those sort of things. Like if you're familiar with Bootstrap, like all of those sort of things are in a separate library, so that people, if they want to build their own products or plugins or whatever in the Blue Ocean style, you can just use that module and you get a whole bunch of things for free. But the main motivation there is like when we have more plugin developers writing plugins, they can more easily write plugins that look like Blue Ocean and feel like Blue Ocean. And we're going to have a style guide to say like, these are the do's and the don'ts. And the component tree actually reflects the do's and the don'ts as well. So expect more consistency in, when you install a plugin, it'll actually, you can actually use it. In most cases, most plugin developers are very good, but there are some plugins that where they've maybe done some custom stuff for some reason that it's kind of hard to keep it consistent. So what you can see here, is all the runs across, our different branches. We're going to add a filter up here so that you can look at the history of a specific branch. So there's things like that we just need to get around to building before we release this for real. So you can scroll down to a failure, open it up, and it's taken me down to the bottom. So in this case, like someone's manually terminated the build. There were some changes there. So by someone called No Reply. So someone in the team has got their Git settings set up incorrectly. You can, nope, we can't do that. I thought that got fixed, but anyway, it's not up there yet.
There's no test because it never ran. But it was killed.
Oh, right. Oh, and it's broken, right. Okay, cool. Actually, we can open that one up again. So you can kind of see, like, just clicking on these, oops. And we need a scroll to top button somewhere. So I've got a design out for that.
There's a lot of JavaScript.
It's a lot of JavaScript. So it's actually a single page app. So like as we're moving around the app, we're not reloading the page at all. But yeah, you can see here that we've got a shell script that's executed. We can look through that and run a bunch of stuff. So that's there. If you need to get to the full log, that's just a click away. You can see the full Jenkins log. So that's what used to appear in the console, tab. But now we hide that away. But sometimes it's useful, like if you're debugging a Jenkins problem, you probably want to see some of this information, but most of the time you don't. So yeah, cool. You can see here pull request. Oops, nope. So we do things like if you don't have pull request enabled, we'll tell you a little bit how you can. Do you know what a push you pull you is? Did anyone ever watch Dr. Dolittle when they were a kid? Yeah. Okay. So, okay, maybe not the people who were born in the last 30 years. Sorry, John. But yeah. But my mom was a big fan of Dr. Dolittle, and there's like a two-headed goat or something called a push you pull you. So I was like, and then no one gets it. So we're going to change this copy. So it didn't survive some cultural filter. Yeah, so pull requests will show up there. Our branches will show up here as well. Do show up here. One of the things that we are talking about at the moment is how can we organize this to be more relevant. So if we've got a favoriting system, it's definitely the things that you've got favorited need to kind of go up the top because they're your things. And if we have auto favoriting when you push branches and Jenkins detects that you're the author, those things are going to appear up there too. And then when you delete the branch from Git, then it just unfavorites because Jenkins will delete there's a job that represents this branch in the model that gets removed and updates. So that's kind of cool. Do I have to be logged in to run at the moment, or is that safe? Okay. Maybe it's easier if I just go to where my other window is. So the thing I want to demo is something that we call quite lovingly the karaoke mode. We had a bit of just the CloudBees people, we had a bit of a team offsite in Kyoto, and we're totally digging Japan. So there's this kind of follow along mode as the build's running with the pipeline. So I'll just show that in a second. I'm going to go and run.
Can you just run it from the
That just doesn't do what you think it does. Yeah, so there's a few things like, oh, it's a favorite now. That's new.
Because it's just started running.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no pagination yet.
Yeah, there's no pagination at the moment, so someone's got to do that this week. Yeah. So it scrolls along. You can click, scroll up. Did that actually get deployed? Didn't you fix that? No. Oh, we don't actually have we don't use stages in this build. Come on. We've got time.
Use the visualization build.
Does it run for long enough?
I think it has some pauses in it. Offline visualization build.
Yeah. I'm just trying to do this on the tiny, tiny screen. And really need to get that fixed.
Oh, maybe it runs too fast.
It runs too fast, yeah. So Jenkins design language has its steps in there.
Run master.
Yeah, there's a bug at the moment that's preventing the server sent events working on through a proxy. So we need to fix that really soon. Yeah, here we go. So it's following along, appending to the bottom of the display. We're going to get rid of that awful jump. That looks really gross. So, but if I can stop it by either like clicking or just starting to scroll. And if I want to go to other steps here, like if I want to go back and have a look at that one, I can. And then if I come back and click on this, it'll scroll down to the bottom and continue following along. So if you're going, oh, that's an interesting thing in the log, it's not going to move around on you. So, yeah. Cool.
It's called karaoke mode because the ball follows along.
The bottom, yeah. Yeah. And plus the engineer Thorsten, who couldn't be with us this week, he really likes karaoke, like it's unhealthy. Yeah. Cool. Alrighty. So that's it. Does anyone have any questions? John, since you're the host.
So you said when it becomes 1.0, but you didn't say when that would be. So I was going to ask you the question.
I'm a product manager. It's
Oh, okay. Can you put a developer up there so I can ask him? He might actually tell me.
Yeah. So we're going to do beta. We're aiming to do a beta at Jenkins World, probably with what you just see here and plus personalization. So the favoriting system and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to try and get most of that working and the test reporting. So we're really in this kind of making sure the code quality is good, and we're going through and testing on browsers and just getting things safe for consumption. As of the 1.0, I'm hoping it'll be the first half of next year, hopefully the closest part to New Year's.
There's a lot of plugins we want to make sure work out of the box, which means encouraging people or doing the work to port them over so that people get enough base functionality that they can spend a lot of their time in Blue Ocean without too much need to going back to Classic. But there will be, and we've talked about this with John earlier in the week, the ability to quickly switch back to Classic. So if we know on a certain page there's extensions implemented that Blue Ocean isn't yet supporting, we can show a little message saying, hey, you might be missing out on something here. Here's a link to the relevant page in Classic. So we want to have some good coverage.
Yeah.
So then that just takes time because there's over 1,000 odd plugins, but it's mostly a long tail. So we want to tackle the big ones to give good utility.
And we're doing some. So Jenkins has a dial home, like a dial home analytics thing that kind of just reports anonymously like what plugins you're using in your instances, and of course that's when you set it up, you can enable, disable. We're using that data to figure out sort of what sort of the most popular plugins are, and then we've got some further static analysis that we run on those plugins that figures out what extension points actually touch the classic UI. So we're trying to narrow down exactly what plugins do what and how popular they are, like relative to if they have UI or not. So a lot of plugins contribute, like for build steps, we don't have a way of setting up freestyle projects, so we don't have to convert those plugins. But we want to really target the ones that do get used. Yeah.
There's also a bunch of work done so that plugins that are written in this new style of componentry have sort of protection and isolation, because plugins, God forbid, have bugs. And there's many a plugin that can cause a config page to load in many a late night. And we've worked very hard with Blue Ocean to isolate those failures. So should a plugin failure, you get a nice red dot around it explaining what the failure is.
Yeah.
And the rest of the page
Doesn't explode the page, and then you have to go disabling plugins. It'll tell you which plugin broke. Sorry, you had a question? Was it? Oh, yeah.
So I noticed you have an approval feature. Is that something built into Blue Ocean, or is that some Jenkins plugin?
That's part of pipeline
Yeah.
in Jenkins. So in Jenkins pipeline, you can ask for an input step, and that input at the very least is yes, no, to continue the build or abort the build.
But I believe you can have you can set up fairly sophisticated forms for variables like fixed drop downs and
input variables. Or you can say, I need approval from someone in a certain position or a certain role. So it might be a developer that submitted something and someone with the right access needs to press yes, so it actually does the production.
Yeah.
That's a feature of pipeline. That's not a feature of pipeline.
I think it was you and you. Yeah.
So is there any effort or as part of 1.0 or where to incorporate some of this into like notification or some of this nice UI into like as an email, as a Slack post, is that part of the scope of the project?
It's definitely a part of the scope of the project.
It's part of the editor for the pipeline. So
Oh, do you mean sending notifications and things? Yeah. So like as I said before, like in the beginning of the talk, it's like anything that kind of touches the tools that you use and making them work well with Jenkins, we count as the developer experience that we want to improve. So
it should be really easy to say, look, we're at this stage of the pipeline or at the end, then notify the culprits via Slack, via email, or in chat IRC.
Yeah.
And just be able to say, look, culprits, I don't want to list who they are. I don't want to list the chat rooms. Just tell the culprits.
So some of those notifications at the moment leave a lot. I know some of them leave a lot to be desired. So yeah, it's definitely something that we're thinking about. That's also, if that's something you're interested in, that's also something that we'd love to get help on. We want to encourage more people to develop. Like, we're not only trying to make Jenkins easier to use, but also easier to develop for. So if you're more of a front end person or more of a back end person, there's like a lot of work here. On the open source part, it's open source, right? That we would love to get help with. So, yeah, cool.
Yeah, you touched upon the graphical tools.
Yeah.
Do you have a video for that?
Yeah, sure.
And a follow-up question about that is, will it be two-way?
So yes, yeah. This
it
still
has to be two-way editable. That's but to do that, we're reworking some of the way that pipeline itself is stored, because currently it's a script which is very hard to make two-way editable, but we're working on tweaking that so it is two-way editable.
There were a couple of videos posted on YouTube, I think about a year more. Are they the relevant ones, or?
They're like the grandfathers of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, in fact, some of the code is living on from one of those was actually our first, one of the team members' first forays into React.js, and he liked it so much he managed to convince everyone else that we should.
So this is
convince the community that React was the right way to go as well.
So this is the editor. You can imagine you've clicked like new pipeline and said, I want to store this pipeline's definition in a repository. We have a flow that we're still designing that we want to get done for the 1.0 about like connecting to version control systems and discovering Jenkins files, and then with the editor creating Jenkins files. So like we can't have a good editor without sort of like a place to hang it. It's kind of like building it's two-story house and you build the second floor first. We are doing some work to figure out what that editor looks like, because if you look at a lot of these sort of like workflow building tools, they are really horrible to use. I don't know if there's a good one. So what we're trying to do is build sort of like if there are features that we can't put in the editor that we can't make sense or make usable, then they're probably not going to be included. But this should be good for people who are starting out with Jenkins, or people who sort of used to working in that freestyle way of working. So with this, you can see here, like we've just created a stage for you called build. Using these plus buttons, you can either create another sequential stage or another parallel step or set of steps within that build stage. So say if I go and click on that one, it says, give me a name, it's called test. It then renders out the one called test. We can then add more scripts to it. So this is some random script that I copied off Google. And if I click add step, I can search for the steps that I want, adds a little description.
You probably saw in one of those videos that showed a list of steps that was discovered from Jenkins, and that still holds.
Yeah.
So depending on the plugins you got installed, including plugins that you might have built bespoke for your company, then they will show up just the same. So you could encapsulate a whole lot of a whole lot of logic in some sort of block scope step, and it will just show up here in the editor.
That's where I wanted to come down to, like, if I have a Git settings or there's an architecture settings, which is kind of common for rest of our projects. Can we reconfigure and then kind of drag, drop, and press right stuff?
That's right. That's the idea. So especially if you build a step that encapsulates all those, and steps can contain other steps, then you can sort of drag them in. Yeah, that's right.
So like if you have like a retry step, it's 5 more minutes. Yeah. So if you have a retry step and you want to retry over and over again, so like for 5 attempts of a set of steps, you can express that in the editor as well. This UX is not final yet. We have not put it in front of users, so you guys are the first people who are seeing it outside the Blue Ocean team. But we will post some of this on the mailing list really soon. It's kind of hard trying to do good design out in the open because there's always that struggle. Like you want to get it out and get it in front of people so they know what we're doing, but at the same time, sometimes early feedback can be harmful to the process. So it's a balancing act that we try to get it basically out to the community as soon as we can, and as soon as I guess the way that we feel about it is like, is it defensible if we put something out there that looks stupid? People are going to call us stupid, and that kind of undermines the whole process of changing this stuff. So when we put something out, it's got to be something that we think is good, basically, and that we can defend in an argument on a mailing list. Open source is a joy sometimes, but you can get a lot of stuff done. So cool. Any other questions? Sure.
Yeah, so you showed us the logs and how the folding and tailing works on the build
Mhm.
page. So had some situations in the past where a log may be several megs. How does that affect the performance of the build detail page that's now immediately showing you the log versus the classic view that had a totally separate page?
That's an awesome question.
It actually works better than before.
Yeah,
It's
so-
using the same mechanism where it only loads the last NK. I can't remember what it is.
Yeah, it's like 10K of
Yeah.
log, and
But
because the logs,
Because it's broken down by step, it's only going straight to the step that failed, whereas in the past it would load the whole log and
Yeah.
you have to scroll.
and it's lazily loading those things. So like as you click on a step, it's actually fetching that from the server and then displaying the first 10K.
And frankly, a 4 meg log sounds like a luxury on just a 50 megabyte log.
Yeah.
I was being nice though.
That's
Yeah.
I dream of a 4 megabyte.
Yeah. Maven with some Selenium tests and you get
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of screwed. Yeah. Cool.
But no, that's definitely part of this is dog food. So the build process for Blue Ocean is just unbelievably large and generates a lot of logs. So
Yeah.
we tend to
It's-
notice those things
yeah.
pretty. So yeah.
Cool. Tyler.
If I try this out and it doesn't work, or it does work and I've got ideas or thoughts, how do I get those to you?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So you can always file bugs on the issue tracker. It's kind of the recommended way of getting in touch with us for problems. If you have new ideas, the best thing to do is post either on the Jenkins users or Jenkins developers mailing list.
Probably the Jenkins developers with the prefix of
Square bracket Blue Ocean, and we've got special filters and stuff set up so that
the Jira component is
Blue Ocean dash plugin. Yeah.
And
So it's really easy. Just where the team that is paid by Cloudbees to work on this is almost completely global. So there's like one day a week where, because of the dateline and all that kind of stuff, where we're not working on this. So you can get in touch with us. It's really cool because and distracting on the weekend. You go out for breakfast and you're like reflexively like check your email and you're like, so cool. Yeah. All right. Cool. One last question, anyone? Cool. All right. Thank you very much.